So we just witnessed a tremendous miracle. And this miracle begins the most decisive of Jesus' teachings. It's going to be on the Holy Eucharist. Right? This is the miracle that opens John chapter 6. If you've been paying attention, this is the opening verses of that chapter. And it's decisive because by the end of chapter 6, many of Jesus' followers will leave him. They'll leave his company. They'll no longer follow him. They'll leave him because he's going to say things like, "Unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. My flesh is true food, my blood is true drink." And here at the very beginning, and to prepare his followers to hear the amazing and also challenging things he's going to say about the Eucharist, he begins with this extraordinary miracle. And I don't know if you're paying attention in what St. John is saying is that Jesus, one of the first things that Jesus does, he raises his eyes. You can imagine Jesus' face as he looks up with those piercing eyes and gazes upon the thousands of people who are coming to see him. Desiring with all his heart to give them life. In fact, it's going to become clearer later on in chapter 10 when Jesus says explicitly, "I came that they may have life and have it more abundantly." For this reason he has come. And since Jesus knew who he was and what his mission was, it might have been with a little bit of a wry smile, he says to Philip, "Where can we buy enough food for them to eat?" And Philip kind of reminds me of just kind of the realist, right? Philip, he kind of looks at reality in the face and just speaks his mind. 200 days' wages worth of food would not be enough for each of them to have a little. But there's something lacking from Philip's vision. He's seen the surface. He's really good about pointing out the poverty, the insufficiency. But there's something deeper happening, and Jesus wants to bring him to it. He wants to bring all of us to that. It's too easy for us as fallen human beings as we stay on the surface. We're not seeing deep enough into reality of what is happening here. He sees the scarcity and the impotence that characterizes this fallen world in an impossible situation. In a way, he kind of says it for all of us. Don't we do this in our own lives? We come to that place of poverty, whether that's a life situation or maybe it's just ourselves and our own shortcomings. And we say, how can this be done? How can I do this? Whereas what God says is, watch what I can do. And I think St. Andrew's, that quiet man of faith, he's already heading down the right path. Right? What's his response? He's not pointing out the scarcity and the poverty so much as like, here's what we got to work with. Here's what we got. 5 barley loaves, a couple of fish. But he also is not seeing deep enough yet. It is a situation of utter poverty and incapacity and an impossible situation, except one thing is different. Because God is present. God in the flesh. And what does he do with that poverty, that scarcity, that insufficiency? He takes it into his hands. And he changes it. And this is what is symbolized in the offertory at every Mass. Right? We give him bread and wine. And what is he going to do with that? We give him our lives and the poverty of our lives. We say, I got to get this into the hands of Jesus because he is going to do something. And he takes that poverty and that incapacity and that scarcity, and what does he do? He creates richness, superabundance, and life. The Lord gives more than we could ever ask for or imagine. And he's doing this, and it's like, okay, are you paying attention? Do I have your attention? Because I want you to see more deeply now. Because this is what the material poverty is doing. Bringing us into that place of scarcity and poverty, Jesus is pointing us to see that which is invisible, which is the power of his divinity and the power of his grace. To see more than the physical reality. Because we're going to need to do this in order to understand and to accept and to live his teaching on the Eucharist. We need to have eyes to see what is invisible, to see the invisible God and invisible grace at work in the multiplied loaves and the fishes, to the reality that Jesus is preparing us, that he is indeed God, and that he is going to give us his flesh and blood to eat and drink, that we might have his eternal life. The eyes to see that this man, Jesus of Nazareth, is God the Son. Eyes to see that what appears to the physical senses as bread and wine is indeed his body, blood, soul, and divinity. And so there's a lesson here for us. Don't bemoan or flee the poverty and the insufficiency, especially within ourselves. It's the occasion of God's power. And in that, he works a sign. And with this miracle, Jesus works a messianic sign. We hear that connection with that passage from the second book of Kings. Yes, he is the Messiah. Yes, he is a king. But they don't yet see the deeper reality of what his kingship and his kingdom is all about. They want to make him an earthly king. But he came to found a kingdom that would fulfill and transcend the mere physical and the visible. That his kingdom would be in the world, but it wouldn't be of the world. And so this provision of the physical hunger of the crowd was given as a sign of a much more important and much more lasting nourishment. The food that is the very body and blood of God incarnate. And to get it, if we're going to get it, we have to see what is invisible with the eyes of faith. The Eucharist is indeed both material and spiritual. It's, in fact, spiritual reality being communicated to us through what is material. But to see that, we have to see more deeply. That's what a sacrament is. And this is why he says when he flees from them, when they want to make him an earthly king, and then they go back and they find him in Capernaum, and he says, you're not here because you saw a sign, you're here because you had your fill of bread. Work for the food that endures. And then he's going to go into his teaching on the Eucharist. Now I think St. Paul, he offers us a way forward in how to see what is invisible. He tells the Ephesians, live in a manner worthy of the call you have received. Listen to that, let it sink in. Live in a manner worthy of the call you have received. The way we live our lives, the way we think, the way we act, affects what we can see. Live in a manner worthy of the call you have received. The way we live our lives affects what we can see. And so Jesus, what he wants to do is he wants to give us that gift of faith. We can't produce it on our own, but we can receive it as a gift, and he longs and he delights to give it. That gift of faith that allows us to see more than what is physical and material, to see the true, deep spiritual reality that surrounds us. So, and not only to believe, he wants us to believe, to have faith, to have trust, and to commit ourselves to what? The one hope, the one faith, the one baptism. And to live this one faith in baptism, that is to have a living faith. Not just that I know things about Jesus, but that I know him and what he is about and who he is. And how is this manifest? St. Paul tells us, in all humility and gentleness, patience, bearing with one another in love. You know, I can't help but think the timing of this. You know, here we are, we're going to embark on the next 5 weeks of the Bread of Life discourse. Right, the beautiful teaching on the Eucharist. And last week we had our National Eucharistic Congress in Indianapolis, which was amazing and awesome. And hopefully, if you couldn't go, you got to see the talks on YouTube. And then, what happened recently in the opening ceremonies of the Olympics? The overt and deliberate mockery of the Holy Eucharist and of Christians. We live in a world that is very blind, and in some ways willfully so. And what it showed me is that people that are in charge, in their blindness, become the plaything of the enemy. There was no reason for that to happen at all. If it had been any other group, the outcry, the firings, whatever would have happened. Catholics and all Christians, wake up. This deliberate mockery of what is so precious and so true and so beautiful. And this is what Jesus wants to give us, is life. That this was a completely outrageous. Those who think it's okay should not get our vote and should not hold public office, period. To foment this kind of division and this hatred and bigotry, there's no room for it in a country that abides by the rule of law and the freedom of religion. There's no room for it, and there's no reason for it except to foment hate and division and to see if they can get away with it. Because if they can, they're going to do more of it. Catholics, Christians, wake up. And what does it mean about waking up is to embrace, to celebrate, to immerse ourselves in the gift of the Eucharist. We need to deepen our vision to see the supernatural at work all around us, and especially in what happens here. Let's allow the Lord to adjust our eyesight to see the world and his gifts as he sees them. And let's be sure to remember and to hold as precious and to treasure and to celebrate that receiving Christ's body and blood is the most important and most momentous thing that we will do today, this month, this year, this lifetime. The Holy Eucharist is a miracle, and it is the true food that endures and that offers eternal life.